Hi everybody and welcome to this revision webcast, which this time is going to be looking at analysis skills in an exam. Exams approaching pretty quickly, people are getting very excited. They want to know what are the best skills, what are the best approaches they can use to maximize those marks in their micro paper. What I thought I'd do in the next sort of 15-20 minutes is look at analysis. What does it mean? What kind of analysis skills you can show, but crucially go through 3 or 4 questions and some suggested answers to show how you can construct a really good answer, keeping in mind that you're under the pressure of the exam. The clock is ticking and you want to get across a really sound, precise, accurate answer without any messing around. So that's the aim. We're going to look at analysis skills in the AS Micro exam. I think the first point I want to emphasize with you, try to be really clear, exceptionally clear about the command words. So if you get a question which says define, explain, distinguish between, outline, and of course analyze, you don't have to evaluate. Do what it says on the tin, everybody. If you don't have to evaluate, don't waste time doing it. You'll end up running out of time at the end of the exam. You don't get any extra marks. However, if you get a question where the command word says evaluate, assess, discuss, to what extent, and crucially for EdXL students, the word examine. Now, those words, they do require evaluation. But that's for another time. We're going to do a separate webinar on evaluation. Our focus tonight is on the idea of analysis skills. So what does analysis actually mean? Well, there's different ways of explaining it, but essentially what analysis means is when you're given a chance to explain a theory, explain a relationship, explain perhaps cause and effect, explain possibly the consequences of a particular policy or external shock. So analysis is using the theory that you've been taught and using the theory and the ideas that have been a core part of your course. My strong advice to you in the exam is to adopt a step-by-step approach when you analyze. Use connective phrases. Build chains of analysis, chains of reasoning. And if you do that without any waffle, the exam will be right with you all the way, and we're looking to give you high analysis marks. Crucial point is to revise your core theory, your core ideas, and then put it together in a nice, clear, succinct way. Okay, move on. Here are some examples of connective phrases. Now, there's many examples one could use, but these kind of phrases are a good way of linking paragraphs or linking sentences together. The effect of this might be something. This has had an impact on X. Therefore, this can cause. These are sort of connective phrases, and if you like, they're the glue which holds an analysis answer together. Now, actually, as part of our revision sessions at various cinemas around the UK, we've been spending a bit of time on the idea of connective words. And actually, although I won't go through the whole of this slide with you tonight, you can download this slide off the PDF of the webinar and maybe take a bit more time to read through it. But essentially, connective words, very short, simple words which help provide flow in the answer. So, for example, I'll take the left-hand side here, cause and effect words. Consequently, because, therefore, thus, so. They just give your answer a little extra flow. Sequencing words like meanwhile, or then, and when. Okay? So connective words, many of you will already use them exceptionally well. Maybe worth thinking about if you're a little sure how to put sentences together into a paragraph. So what I thought I'd do in this session is take you through, if we have time, let's say 4 questions. These are possible exam questions or ones that have just been set from different exam boards. So stay with me if you're EdXL, we're looking at an AQA question or vice versa, or another exam board. I'll have a look at some questions and show how you can build good analysis. Here's our first question, really topical. Analyze 2 possible effects of a decision to introduce rent controls in the UK housing market. Now here the question is giving you a really clear steer, okay? 2 possible effects. They're looking for you to analyze 2 effects and only those 2. So don't go off on kind of bullet lists, scattergun approaches. Focus on 2 possible effects. Of course, a rent control is a topical issue. Now here's a suggested answer. Don't worry, the slide's going to stay up for a few seconds, it's not going to disappear. So what I'll do is I'll show you the suggested answer, and initially this will be in black text. Look at the bottom of the screen, everybody. I color code answers. I think it's quite an interesting way, or a useful way of doing it. So for example, when I'm showing knowledge as a skill, that text will be in orange. When I'm using an extract or using a chart or a table, that will be an application, and that will be in light blue. When I'm analyzing, my text will be in purple. And when I'm evaluating an argument, my text will be in green. This is my color coding approach to particular questions. Obviously, in this session, we're not looking at evaluation, just focusing on analysis. So here's a question about rent controls, and here's a suggested answer. Notice what I'm doing here. Think about the structure of the answer. I'm starting with a clear definition. And if there's the first take-home point to get from this session, define key terms in the question. A rent control, a rent cap, a legally imposed price ceiling, limits what a landlord can charge, then take it a little stage further and say that to be effective, maximum rent effectively must be set below the normal free market equilibrium rent. Starting my answer with a clear definition of the term. Sometimes a one-line definition is fine. Sometimes you just want to take it a little extra further and show your awareness. So that's my start. And then I build my answer. I'm looking to write 2 analysis paragraphs. Here's the first one. So one possible effect is that the supply of properties might contract. And then I explain, this is a connective word. This is because a rent cap reduces the financial incentives to let out a flat or a house. Full stop. Another connective word. Then, if available supply falls, the rental market will experience excess demand, as shown in my analysis diagram. We'll come to the diagram in a second. Sometimes it's worth putting that little phrase into your answer, as shown in my analysis diagram, because then the examiner will be pointed to the diagram that you've produced. And keep that diagram separate from your text. More people wish to rent at low prices than there are houses available. This is called a disequilibrium. Notice there in orange, everybody, I'm putting in some concepts. I'm showing my knowledge. Excess demand, disequilibrium. Okay, that's my first paragraph. Here's my second paragraph. A second effect might be, notice there that I'm linking back to the question. So I'm telling the examiner very clearly that I'm writing my second effect, and he or she is going to get 2 chunky bits of analysis. So give me the full marks. Second effect might be to cause a shadow market, a bit more knowledge. With tenants paying the legal maximum rent, they can't be charged anymore, of course, but also being charged extra by landlords for things like maybe decoration or an extra key. The landlords want to claw back the extra revenue and therefore increase their producer surplus. Hey, that's another concept I could have put in orange, another useful theoretical idea. And hey, look, there's another connective word. Consequently, the maximum rent may be less than the actual cost of renting the property. So there's an answer to the question. It's hopefully reasonably well written. It's clearly showing 2 possible effects: contraction of supply, shadow market. And I'm trying to use connective words to glue it all together, if you like. Then, of course, you'd whack in the diagram. Strong bit of advice, please, on analysis diagrams. Try, if you can, to contextualize the axes. What on earth does that mean, I hear you say? Well, it means that you try and link and make it clear to the examiner that the market you're studying is the one that you're showing in the answer. So look at the x-axis down here, the quantity of rental housing is down here. On the y-axis, the rent in pounds per week. I'm making it clear this is a rental diagram. My maximum price, of course, has to be set below the equilibrium. That would be absolutely fine as a diagram. Can do the job and get the marks. Could go a little further. Here's a slightly more complex diagram. Shows the maximum rent, but it suggests that if the supply contracts to Q3, so if the supply goes down to Q3 down here, then actually there's going to be an excess demand in the market. Consumers will be willing to pay a higher rent. They can only be charged the maximum rent, but some people would be willing to pay a higher rent. And therefore the landlord might find a way of extracting this area here of consumer surplus in order to try and achieve higher revenue. So this would be a slightly more complex analysis diagram to go with my 2 chunky but concise and precise paragraphs. Okay, here's another question. Okay, a question on tablet computers. Here's the question: analyze the effect of an increase in market supply of tablet computers on the level of producer surplus. There's the question. Okay, so if there's an increase in supply of iPads or Samsung Galaxy tablets, whatever it is, what's the effect on the level of producer surplus? Okay, so here's my starting point. What I want to do again is I want to give a really clear definition. Producer surplus is the difference between the price a business gets when selling their output and the minimum price they need to supply. Start with a definition. Okay, then I build my analysis. Outward shift of supply, it's mentioned in the question. For example, caused by higher productivity, cause and effect, leads to a fall in the market price and an expansion of demand. As a result, the area of producer surplus, I've already defined that term, goes up from ADB to area FEC. Okay? This is shown in my diagram. That little line there tells the examiner, go over, look at my diagram. It's all there for you. Now, on the left-hand side, you'll see the diagram showing an outward shift of supply and a movement down the demand curve. My strong advice to you is to avoid untidy shading. I think it's just much neater, much cleaner to label the relevant bits of a diagram. If you get used to this through practice, your diagrams will come across in the exam as so much neater, so much easier to mark, and you'll get the credit. To think a little bit about psychologically how the examiner feels when they're marking your script. If you can present really clear analysis diagrams to them, they're on your side, you'll get the full marks. Everything's labeled, everything looks neat and clean and accurate, and we just get the marks and move on. Let's move on to another question. I said I'd take you through a few questions. Here's a question, an Edexcel type question. Don't worry, AQA fans, there's a question for you coming up in a second. So here's a question on tax. Analyze the effect of an indirect tax on the market if demand is price inelastic. So this could be, for example, an indirect tax on, who knows, high-fat foods, or an indirect tax on cigarettes, or whatever it is. Okay? We're asked to think about the consequences. Well, here's my answer, currently in black text. Okay? Again, I'm starting with my approach. I start with a definition. Okay? I define my terms straight away because I want to get those marks. Indirect tax is a tax imposed on producers by the government. Sometimes a one sentence, maybe even a one-line definition would be absolutely fine. But then I build my analysis. The effect of a tax is to cause an inward shift of supply. The amount of the tax is shown by the vertical distance. The low price elasticity, because it says that in the question, means that price elasticity is less than 1. There's a connective word there, or connective phrase. As a result, when a tax is imposed, the producer can pass on most of this tax to the consumer in the form of a higher price. Okay? And then another connective phrase. In this way, the producer is able to protect some of their revenues and profits. Well, that explains everybody a tax. I think it pretty much does, doesn't it? There might be a better answer, but in my opinion, that answer does the job. Okay? It's like a long-seal answer. It does what it says on the tin. Now, let's have a look at our diagram. The question says, if demand is price inelastic. The smart, the savvy, the clued up student make sure the demand curve they draw is relatively inelastic. That's shown in my diagram here. Consumers are fairly price unresponsive to a change in tax. And the result is very clear that the consumer pays most of the tax and the producer only has to absorb relatively little. So the consumer pays P1 to P2, a higher price. The producer absorbs the green area there. They absorb the difference between P1 and P3. Now, I haven't labeled these axes here. I haven't actually put a price on the y-axis. So there's a mistake with the diagram here. But if you don't fancy labeling or shading, you might want to color in. That's not a great idea. Okay? Better to label to improve that diagram. Okay, analysis diagrams clearly help. Hopefully you've got an idea from this webcast that when you draw a really good, clear, crisp, clean analysis diagram, you are sending a powerful message to the examiner. a good one. However, if you draw really scrappy, untidy diagrams that are either too small or too large, but are just a mess, you're sending an even bigger, powerful message to the examiner, and that's something you need to avoid. Aim for accurate, neat, well-drawn analysis diagrams. They will make a big difference to your script. And my strong advice is to practice 5, maybe 10 diagrams a day until you can literally do them in your sleep. Let's have a look at an AQA question. EdXL fans, don't turn off. I need you to stay. With the help of an appropriate diagram, explain the view of education as a service which markets tend to under-provide. Now, this doesn't say it in the question, but if you're really switched on, if you've done your revision, it's clearly hinting that you need to be talking about either information failure with education or the positive externalities from education. This is a kind of market failure question. It doesn't say market failure in the question, but clearly this is what it's all going to be about. And there's our question. Okay, well, here's an answer. I've put in the text and the diagram here. So one way of approaching it is to say, well, let's think about this education as a merit good. If you consume merit goods, early years education, right the way through to university, there could be some external benefits. Higher incomes, higher productivity, more mobility of labour. There's a nice little paragraph there about talking about what some of the externalities might be. But crucially, in my analysis, I keep linking back to the question. In the question, it says under provision, under consumption of education. So one reason is it's a long-term investment decision. Private benefits may take many years to accrue, but the costs are kind of pretty much upfront. Okay, that might put some consumers off. In my diagram, the private optimum consumption is Q1, where you just think about your marginal benefits, private benefits and private costs. But actually, if we think about the externality effects, the social benefit lies above the private benefit, and actually we prefer to have a level of consumption of education of Q2. So the difference between Q1 and Q2 in the diagram on the right-hand side here, if you like, is the under provision. It's the under consumption of education as a merit good. And that, of course, creates a social welfare loss. So I'm combining, hopefully, clear analysis writing with a very clear analysis diagram. Second approach, I always adopt a slightly different approach. So, well, actually, this is really an issue about information failure. Okay, education is tends to be under-consumed because people, including many young people, they don't have the full information about the long-term benefits and consequences to themselves of staying on an education. For example, beyond the minimum school leaving age of 17. And if only people had better information, full information on the private benefits to themselves, then the marginal benefit curve would shift outwards, and therefore, given the level of cost, more education would be consumed. And I'm linking back to the risk of market failure. So there's my answer. That's my second approach to this question. And again, just looking at it from a color coding point of view. I'm showing my knowledge. I'm linking under provision to information failure. And then building analysis along the way and putting a little example of what the minimum school leaving age is back to my analysis. And crucially, just at the end, I'm linking back to the question. I'm making it clear to the examiner that I know this is really essentially about market failure. The under provision is a failure of the free market system. Again, diagrams, labeled, contextualized, neat, clean, send the right message to the examiner. One more diagram, one more question. This is for AQA, but it could be any question. With the help of an appropriate diagram, they even give you a steer here. You've got to use one. Explain how rising incomes in two of the BRIC countries, China and India, have affected the global price of wheat. Now, there was an extract showing the price of oil and sugar and all the sort of market for biofuels. But here's my suggestion. So I'm looking to show how incomes in China and India have affected the global price of wheat. The economics is that as incomes go up, the emergence of middle-class consumers, for example, more people can afford cars, certainly more people can afford to drive motorbikes, etc. So the demand globally for oil goes up. As the price of oil goes up, there's an incentive actually for non-crude oil supplies to be increased. It gives it a kick-start and incentive to biofuel production. So have a look at my answer on the left-hand side. Rising real incomes in China and India have increased demand for cars and motorbikes and contributed to higher world oil prices. Then a little connective word. Because crude oil and biofuels are substitutes, knowledge, rising oil prices has caused an increase in demand for biofuels. Then I'd get some application marks. Extract B says this has caused farmers to switch production of wheat away from food towards biofuels. And the higher cost of oil will have increased their costs. So there's quite a bit of microeconomics there, trying to explain the effect of growing incomes, rising oil prices, and the effect on wheat producers. Then I just take it a little further. In the short term, the supply of wheat is likely to be inelastic because of production lags, low stocks, limited spare capacity. Therefore, connective word. Therefore, an outward shift of demand for wheat in use for biofuel will bring about a large increase in price. Another connective word. This is added to by rising costs for wheat farmers. Hopefully you see here how connective words can act as the glue that holds the paragraph together. But what really holds this answer together is a diagram. Here it is. It looks horrendously complicated, but basically I'm suggesting that the increased price of biofuel is incentivizing, so increased demand for biofuel shifts out the demand for wheat globally, drives the price up. But crucially, as the price of oil goes up, it could also cause wheat farmers to have higher costs, the costs of energy and use in wheat farms. But I'm trying to show here how rising incomes in China can drive up the global price of wheat. So butterfly economics here. Butterfly flaps its wings in one part of the world, China and India, and has a consequence for wheat farmers in Iowa. Okay? Analysis is building explanations using connectives, chains of reasoning, and good, clean diagrams. This has been a revision webcast on analysis skills in AS Micro. I hope it's been of some use to you. We're going to be doing a separate session on evaluation skills, so check out Twitter, GDT_econ, or @GDTU. Check out our website. All of these presentations, all of these seminars are saved and uploaded onto YouTube, and I hope that's been useful. Look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.